Welcome back to State of the Union. For her, it's personal. This week, for several days and nights, Democratic Congresswoman Cori Bush, who once lived in a car with her 2 children, slept on the steps of the Capitol, pushing Congress and the president to help keep millions of Americans from facing eviction. And it forced something you don't see here in Washington very often: action. She joins me live now from St. Louis. Thank you so much, Congresswoman, for joining me. You've talked a lot over the last week about how personal a fight this was for you, being evicted 3 times yourself, including while you were raising 2 young children. And I'm going to ask you about some of the details of what happened. But before, I can't help but wonder, given the fact that you raised those kids, now they're grown up, what did they think of your efforts?
To them, it's like, this is what mom does. Mom, mom fights for everyone. And they've seen me do this, whether it's sleeping out on the street to help in my own community, to raise awareness to what's happening to our unhoused community members, to fighting for justice for Michael Brown, who the anniversary of his death is tomorrow. And so my children have seen this over and over again, and they stand with me. And they've been radicalized too. So this is who they want to see their mother. This is who they know.
Your efforts resulted in the CDC issuing a new 60-day eviction freeze for people living in areas with high or substantial COVID transmission, which basically covers almost the whole country right now. But as you know, even President Biden said he's not really sure whether this move is constitutional. It's already facing legal challenges. So if the courts ultimately strike it down, what's your next move?
Well, so that's why I rushed back to St. Louis to make sure that, and we've been saying it nationally, that we have to do the work now to get this money out. We have to do the work to make sure that our states and our local governments are able to release this money, get this money out into the hands of the people who need it the most. So we're telling tenants, we're telling landlords to go online or show up at the clinics that are happening around the country and apply for this money. And for our local government and states, please get this money out. This has to happen. 60 days we may not have. So we are pushing really hard to make sure that people apply. And that's one thing that we keep hearing too, is that especially locally, I've heard, well, people aren't applying. Well, we understand that there have been barriers to people applying and those resources being able to be moved. So we are working out those kinks right now.
I want to ask you about an op-ed that you wrote for CNN.com. And in it you said, quote, "Now that we have again demonstrated what grassroots movements are capable of, there is no limit to what we can do. The change that we have been marching, organizing, and pushing for is within reach. We just have to take it." House Speaker Nancy Pelosi seems to have taken a different stance. On Friday, she drew a distinction. She's done this before, between being an advocate and being a legislator. What's your response?
I'm both. I'm both. I walked into Congress, before I walked into Congress, after I won my primary, I started talking about being a politivist. I am a politivist. I think that it's okay to have both, because when we legislate, yes, we have that power of the pen, the power of the purse. We're able to write bills. We're able to co-sponsor, send letters. All of that is wonderful. You need that. But the activist side of me, that advocate, is the one that remembers what it was like to be in positions where I felt overlooked and neglected and unheard, and so many others in our communities. I'm a nurse, so I am always advocating. That's what we do. And so having both of those, that's that pressure. The activist is going to bring the pressure. The activist is going to highlight the issue so that the legislator can then hit the ball out of the park.
Congresswoman, I want to ask about the criticism that you're facing about comments you made in an interview this past week. I want our viewers to listen.
I'm going to make sure I have security, because I know I have had attempts on my life and I have too much work to do. There are too many people that need help right now for me to allow that. So if I end up spending $200,000, if I spend $10 more on it, you know what? I get to be here to do the work. So suck it up, and defunding the police has to happen. We need to defund the police.
So I know you've seen that Republicans are pointing to the fact that you said you have your own security, while almost in the same breath advocating for defunding the police. Now, I do want to emphasize, I understand you have security protection because you have received multiple death threats, but the clip that I just played is being used in attack ads against not you, but not just you, but other Democrats. So could those comments end up being harmful to your fellow Democrats, politically speaking?
I think what we have to look at is the fact that I made it to Congress in 2020. I was elected to Congress, and we're still fighting this same fight. We're still fighting to save Black lives. That work was not done before I got here. This is the reason why I ran, was to save lives, to save my son's life. It was because Michael Brown, who we're fighting for, still trying to get justice for, is because he didn't get justice, and Vondaire Myers didn't get justice, and Kajim Powell didn't get justice, and so many others. That is why. And because that was not fixed before I got here, to then come at me and say, you're the reason why we have these problems. No, the reason why we have these problems is because those that were in power and could have fixed this problem before now didn't, and it cost lives. And so now that I'm here, we just introduced the People's Response Act to make sure that we are looking at the money that should be going to social safety nets, to make sure that our community members who are living with mental health issues are able to function and live in society the way that anyone would ask to. So I don't believe, as far as my colleagues, I absolutely empathize. I empathize, but you know what? The same thing that the Republicans would do, which is figure out how to work with this on a comms basis. That's what we have to do. My job is to save lives, the lives in my community, because when we're talking about every single year increasing the budget for police, and then the budget for like health and human services continuing to shrink, and St. Louis being #1 for police violence year after year after year, #1, #2 for homicides year and year after year. So when we're adding more money to the police, but we're still dying. So something has to change.
And I hear what you're saying, but I also heard you say that you think it's a comms problem. Is it that? Because
no, I'm saying that we can also, that's another way that you can tackle this. You have to tackle it from more than one place. We have to work on what we want to say, what is our message, but then we also have to understand that we have to save lives too. St. Louis can't keep being put on the back burner at all that, and I'm here to stand up for my community.
Congresswoman Cori Bush, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you.